We begin with India and Pakistan's latest flare-up. It hasn't gone unnoticed in Africa. Some nations have urged calm, while others have weighed their words carefully. Egypt's foreign ministry has released a statement. In light of the situation, Cairo called for restraint. The country expressed concerns over the hostilities that have resulted in casualties on both sides. Egypt's foreign ministry stressed avoiding any escalation and made it clear that it is closely monitoring the situation. It also called on the arch-rivals to resolve the standoff through diplomacy and dialogue rather than military exchanges. India launched missile strikes on Pakistan early on Wednesday. It bombed 9 terror camps during the assault and said it was in response to the Pahalgam terror attack in April. The precision strikes were organized carefully, aiming to avoid harm to civilian areas and Pakistan's army installations. The latest cross-border violence is the deadliest both the nuclear-armed rival neighbors have seen in decades. India maintains that the Pahalgam terror attack, which claimed the lives of 26 innocent civilians, was orchestrated by Pakistan-based terrorists, and its military operation was needed to deliver justice to the victims. The Angolan president, who was on a state visit to India recently, condemned the bloodbath that unfolded in Kashmir last month. He expressed Angola's firm stand against terrorism and stated that Angola was among the first nations to react to the tragedy.
Angola was one of the first to react immediately after the sad event in the Kashmir region, where human lives were victimized. In due time, we made the Indian authorities realize our feelings of sorrow to the Indian people and their families. Since it was an act of terrorism, and Angola obviously condemns any terrorism, regardless of where it is committed.
His remarks were welcomed by Indian leaders. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Draupadi Murmu both thanked him for extending Angola's support.
जम्मू कश्मीर के पहलगाम में हुई नृशंस आतंकवाद हमले के बाद आपके समर्थन और एकजुटता की प्रबल अभिव्यक्ति के लिए भारत सरकार और भारत की जनता की ओर से आपको धन्यवाद.
As the current chair of the African Union, Angola's condemnation of the Pahalgam massacre carries diplomatic weight. The African Union, or the AU, is a continental organization. It consists of 55 countries and works toward peace, development and coordination across the continent. As tensions spiked between India and Pakistan over Pahalgam, India wasted no time in reaching out to key African nations. The Foreign Minister of Algeria held a phone call with his Indian counterpart, Jaishankar, and expressed condolences. Jaishankar also spoke with the foreign ministers of Sierra Leone and Somalia, all non-permanent members of the UNSC. In each call, he underlined India's zero tolerance toward terrorism. It was to ensure that India's stance gets amplified in the world's second biggest continent. As the armed conflict between India and Pakistan draws international attention, African nations have responded with concern and calls for calm. Now, for more on this, we have with us on the show Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, a distinguished fellow Gateway House. He is joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you for being with us, Ambassador.
Thank you.
How do African nations like Egypt and Angola typically position themselves in South Asian conflicts? And what does their response to the recent escalation between India and Pakistan indicate about their evolving foreign policy priorities?
Thank you very much for inviting me to the show. Indeed, Angola and Egypt have spoken. So have 2 other nations as well from Africa, that is Kenya and South Africa. The broad common features in all these reactions are quite easy to decipher. First of all, there is condemnation of international terrorism, particularly this example of terrorism of which India is a victim. And this condemnation is accompanied by a sense of solidarity and sympathy for the victims, that is India. Then another feature is an offer by some of the countries to work closely with India in the struggle against terrorism. And a few others talk about restraint to be shown by the two neighbors, India and Pakistan. And yet the common feature also is that, no one seems to be ready to name Pakistan as the epicenter of terrorism. So this is largely the broader picture of the reactions from Africa.
Right. Right. And Ambassador, Egypt has urged for restraint, as you mentioned, from both India and Pakistan, while Angola condemned the Pahalgam terror attack. Do these differing responses suggest a fragmentation in Africa's approach to international conflict resolution, or do they reflect nuanced bilateral interests?
No, it is not fragmentation. Africa does not always speak with one single voice. The matter probably has not been discussed at the level of the African Union. They don't have a common foreign policy. So each country is completely free to determine its own responses. I think we have to take note of the fact that Egypt has spoken both through its foreign minister and also through its ambassador in Delhi. They have conveyed that Egypt is very upset and angry with this latest manifestation of terrorism in India. On the other hand, Angola is a little bit more different because the president was visiting India at that time. So quite apart from public reaction, I'm sure he discussed this matter in detail with the Indian leadership, and he was able to convey Angola's deep sympathy and support for India.
Yes. And to what extent could African diplomatic engagement contribute to de-escalation efforts between nuclear-armed India and Pakistan? And is there any precedent for such influence?
Basically, the expectation here in Delhi is that Africa, being a very important strategic partner, it would be in a good position to understand the price India is paying for having a neighbor who is driven by terrorism and the desire for revenge and retribution. So essentially, African engagement diplomatically can certainly help clarifying the matter to the global community. India has done so much for the global South. India has played a major role in getting the African Union full membership of G20. But of course, we know that Africa has its own different divergent ways to look at these things. No country basically wants to take position when it comes to a conflict between two countries in South Asia. And therefore, I think India is very realistic. India is very understanding. India will keep briefing and outreaching to the African countries. And our effort, our diplomatic effort, will certainly make a difference in the way in which Africa looks at this problem.
Thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa, Ambassador.
Thank you.
India struck Pakistan. These were precision airstrikes targeting 9 sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Operation Sindoor is India's military response to the Pahalgam terror attack. The operation was focused, measured, and non-escalatory.
Terror knows no boundaries. You start justifying terrorism, contextualizing terrorism, you refrain from taking action against terrorism, you will be hit by terrorism.